him. He is playing against Counterbalance. Now, he does have some interesting tools to get around the old Counterbalance top block. He does have 2 copies of Wipe Away in his sideboard, but we will cross that bridge when we do get to it, as he has already resolved a Preordain, and it looks like he's going to play a Ponder here. Lossett with just a very boring Tundra, but he's actually going to Spell Pierce that Ponder. How do you feel about countering the cantrips here?
I don't like countering the cantrips. I would let the cantrips resolve if I'm Lossett, but maybe I'm not actually sure about playing from Lossett's side. As a high tide player, I'm fine with that. The difference is in this matchup, when I play high tide, I feel like I have to be aggressive because eventually, like, high tide's counterspells are nigh unbeatable when they're being used offensively, but they're not that great at playing defense. Now, you can't defensively passive negation something because then you die on your turn.
Sure.
So eventually, Lossett's going to stick the counterbalance, and that's kind of the problem from the high tide end of things. And you see Lossett here.
He's aggressively countering spells.
Yeah, counterspell on Ponder. This is I have not seen a Miracles player approach the matchup this way, and I'm pretty interested by it.
We're gonna see if this is a good idea or a bad idea.
Right, like right now, Chilbert, if he has high tide, spiral, force of will, he's just in a great position. And I think Lossett's out of counter magic here. So, match going pretty quickly. The door is open for Chilbert, and yeah, he's had very little deck manipulation, but he's making plenty of lands here. He's finding more counter spells. Remember, the only thing Chilbert needs to fight over is counterbalance.
You think there's an argument to be had for fighting over Sensei's top? It's a pretty scary card.
It's scary. You can wait if you're the high tide player for a while. You just if a counterbalance gets down on Lossett's side, then things are bad for you. So you don't want to wait forever. I think if you're Chilbert here and you have the combo with 2 counterspell backup, it's probably time.
Chilbert gonna tap some in here. Is it go time? Not yet. He's got a top of his own.
Yeah, top good on Chilbert's side. Of all the cantrips that he got to resolve, this is probably the best one. This matchup's going to go slow until Lossett gets a counterbalance.
See if Lossett wants to sacrifice his Flooded Strand. Yeah, he's going to spin here.
I guess so.
He's going to spin and then in response sacrifice his land.
Yeah, spinning again, in response sacking his land. Is there a reason to just create a stack there to do it like that as opposed to just cracking, then paying mana? I suppose...
I don't think so.
If Chilbert had a way to kill the top...
Yeah.
Or
like bounce the top or something like that.
Then he gets a spin.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that it is just better.
Yep. Yeah, again, I don't think it's funny because, like, with Joe, it seems like, oh, well, such theatrics. Why would you do it that way? But it's something where I think to the effect of it's just always good to do things properly always, and I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Take a draw
Last
here.
match we saw him go through huge theatrics to draw an extra card off Venser, Shaper, Savant. We saw the entire thing, we talked about it afterward, was to bait a possible Abrupt Decay on a second Sensei's Divining Top, which is why he did it that way.
He had one in his hand already, and then he had one in play. So by doing what he did there, it gave his opponent the opportunity to Abrupt Decay the top, which would have been a waste of a card, which is cool with Joe because he had another top. So.
Right. So you see here, with the help of Fetch Lands and Divining Top, Lossett's hand is getting more hostile toward High Tide as he managed to find a Spell Pierce here. But it's still pretty manageable from Chilbert's side. It's a Spell Pierce, I guess both a Spell Pierce and a Snapcaster for the Spell Pierce.
There's a Flooded Strand, pass the turn back. Chilbert gonna spin his top. I was actually thinking about this for just a moment. In all of my time of doing coverage over the past almost 2 years now, I have very rarely seen top-on-top spinning action.
So we did start covering these right after like the counterbalance era of Legacy.
Yeah,
I would say.
I haven't seen a lot of top-on-top action, which is just really surprising to me. That this is something I rarely see. If both players just spin my top, spin my top, spin my top.
No land there and no cantrip from Chilbert suggests he may just not have the combo right now.
Entreat the Angel's the top card here for Joe. I think that's like the most important card here for Lossett is the Entreat, because this actually will force action from Chilbert, because he can use it on the end of Chilbert's turn and make a bunch of guys and actually put pressure on him now. And that forces Chilbert's hand on a counterspell.
Yeah, it does force Chilbert's hand on a counterspell. It's a counterspell he likely has, but it does knock one out of Chilbert's hand for sure.
I think that's really, really important, is Lossett has actually found a counterbalance here.
Yeah. Nonetheless, this is the important spell.
Yep.
Once Lossett resolves a counterbalance, then it's a nightmare for Chilbert to get out of it.
Maybe it's time to pick a little battle. There's an island.
And if I'm Lossett, I fight over this right away.
Let's have a duel.
All right, counterbalance there for Joe Lossett. Yeah, Chilbert will fight over this as much as he can.
I'm sure just how many cards you have. Lossett's answer, I believe, was 3. He's going to start by spinning his top little Chilbert.
Yeah, there is a Spell Pierce in Joe Lossett's hand, as well as a Snapcaster that can snap a Spell Pierce, or snap a straight-up counter spell. So Lossett with 2 counter spells worth of control here.
There's a Force of Will. That's a preordain.
I know if it says something about, just to stress like how important it is here, Miracles, as it became more popular when I played High Tide last weekend, I ended up playing a pair of main deck Swan songs to Merchant Scroll for, just so I'd have more game against counterbalance.
Wow. That's really telling. But I mean, I understand why this card is just so difficult to beat. Just a top-on-top counter is a decent amount of your spells, all your cantrips, your high tides, all that stuff. So
Yeah. Now, let's not say that Chilbert can't ever get rid of the counterbalance. Like I said, Wipe Away is the go-to spell that gets rid of counterbalance. Now, the danger is that if Lossett can manage to land a second counterbalance, then there's almost no way for Chilbert to get rid of it.
I actually like Lossett not fighting over that. Like, it takes care of a Force of Will, but Chilbert doesn't have very many cards in his hand. Top can obviously help find some things, but I actually kind of like this play here from Joe of, okay, you took care of my Force of Will. That's cool. I can move forward.
That's so hard to do. Counterbalance is so important here.
I mean, the fact that he has Spell Pierce and plus Snapcaster Mage for a Spell Pierce or a Counterspell means that he's still doing okay, and if he does find just another copy of Counterbalance, he can fight over that one instead.
Yeah, he can fight over a second copy of it. Remember, a lot of counterspells in the Miracles deck. He's got to be pretty confident that Chilbert just doesn't have the combo in hand. It's a dangerous game to try to play a counter war against High Tide. I guess that's the risk Lossett's running right now.
Take a draw. It's an island. Again, I still think that he's setting up the big Entreat the Angels on the end step.
Right, so he's going to try to win with, and I completely agree, he's going to try to win with an end step and treat the Angels here. Though a lot of times, if you can land a counterbalance, you don't need to go for the Entreat the Angels. You can win with just the counter everything for the entire game plan. And then win with a Jace or really a Vendilion click.
There's a Brainstorm.
No need to counter that yet. Chilbert needs to find his combo pieces. He does have the High Tide in hand, it looks like.
Yeah, we do know about that. What those pieces back does has no interest in sacrificing a fetch land. Looks like he picked up a Cunning Wish, going to play an island here. Pass the turn back. I think this is where Lossett probably makes his move.
Yeah, and has he been floating the Entreat on top?
Yep.
Okay.
This might be the time when Chilbert makes his move too, though. We'll see.
Well, Chilbert can't go off at instant speed. I mean, he can... I guess in theory he can go off at instant speed. He can wish for Brain Freeze and Brain Freeze at instant speed, but he really can't build up enough... It's really unreliable that he can build up enough Storm to make that lethal.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That was something that Solidarity was very good at doing, but High Tide's really a your turn kind of combo deck.
Lossett actually going to let his Entreat the Angels go. So you see him add a mana and then sacrifice the Arid Mesa top activation here.
Lossett's just playing this purely defensively. Just wants to get more lands, get more counter spells, eventually resolve a counterbalance. You know,
it sticks with what he's been doing the entire time, right?
Yeah, even if he Miracles and Entreat naturally, I wouldn't be surprised if he just Entreats for, 2 or some smaller number.
I just think he wants to put some pressure on him and force Chilbert's hand a little bit, that's all.
I agree. Like I said, right now Lossett is wanting to play a counter war against High Tide, which, like I said, you can do it. I mean, if anyone can do it, Miracles is the deck that has enough counter spells to just power it through.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's a dangerous game to play.
Especially now, Chilbert has a Cunning Wish in his hand, so he could go Cunning Wishing for a card like Turnabout and force Lossett's hand.
Right, and Colin Chilbert certainly can use Turnabouts on end step to force action from Lossett.
I think that third card he looked at was a Counterbalance. We might have a second fight here.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. It's the whole combo. It's a fetch land, a counterbalance, and a divining top.
Yeah.
So
take a draw. Let's put this one on the stack, I think.
Yep, and he's going to go for another counterbalance. And this is the game plan that Lossett wants. The game's gone a little long for Chilbert. Against most blue decks, against Stoneblade, this is the kind of matchup that the kind of pacing that Chilbert would actually really like.
Sure. Chilbert going to start by spinning his top in response to this counterbalance. So, of course, the balance hasn't resolved just yet. He needs to find a way to make sure that thing stays off of the table.
Yeah, he sees there's a merchant scroll in hand. He has a white bordered card.
I'm going to set that back. Yeah, chances are it's time to do battle over this. Unless Colin feels like he can beat it with Cunning Wish maybe searching for Wipe Away.
Yeah, so he can right now Cunning Wish for Wipe Away if he wants. And I think, yeah, counterbalance has resolved.
Mm-hmm. Going to start by sacrificing the fetch land here.
Now, I'm not sure what play he's going for. So he decided to sack a fetch land right now on end step as opposed to sacking a fetch land and then topping again, which implies he wants to use all of his mana this turn.
Yeah.
Like, if you were going to sack a fetch land and then top again on end step, and that was your whole line, you'd probably want to do it in response to the counterbalance just because.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that one. Is it time to maybe go wishing?
Yeah, well, he has the Cunning Wish. Let's see what he chooses to do with it, and it's going to be cast here. I'm curious that he's casting it. He let the counterbalance resolve before casting Cunning Wish here.
Going to spin top with the set.
The problem is that Lossett does have the access to Snapcaster into straight counterspell right now.
You see Lossett's top 3 cards. He's got a Flooded Strand, a top, and a Jace the Mind Sculptor.
So he has 4 and 1 and 0 covered.
This is probably going to be snappy on counterspell. There is your Snapcaster Mage.
Yep, Snapcaster cast here.
This might be a Fluster. No, this is going to be spinning at the top. Maybe he's looking for Flusterstorm. We'll see.
Yeah, Flusterstorm would be a counter spell that would counter the counter spell.
Mm-hmm.
But then the spell pierce on Lossett's hand will still take care of the Cunning Wish.
Yeah, that's true. It's a tough road to get through here for Chilbert. If someone can figure out, it's him.
Yeah, well, once he's under countertop, his options are just fairly limited. Like, if the turnabout play you're talking about, that's not really going to work because there's a 4 floating on top of Lossett's deck. He can't really combo because counterbalance plus divining top means that he really can't ever resolve a high tide through it.
Well, so that's actually going to use the... this is a little bit interesting. He's actually used the spell pierce from his hand. Now that... So I actually like this a lot because this is in response to Snapcaster Mage. And so what he's doing is he's saying, okay, I'm going to use the spell pierce from my hand and counter your copy of Cunning Wish. And then I'm going to target Brainstorm with my Snapcaster Mage and cast a Brainstorm. I think that's what we're going to see
So
happen.
yeah, now he got full value out of spell pierce. And he gets a Brainstorm off the Snapcaster.
Now, he is exposed a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit here. So, Brainstorm, again, we know these 3 cards. The reason that this is important is because he can set this however he wants to, sure, but then he puts 2 cards back. He gets to keep 1 of them, and then his 3rd card down is now a mystery. Right, that's why this is important.
He keeps the lands that he has access to both a 1 and a 4. Remember, we're on Lossett's end step, so this is going to go to Chilbert's turn.
Mm-hmm.
Chilbert's hand, it looks to be a High Tide and a Blue Sun Zenith. So he never found the Spiral this game.
There's a Zenith for 3.
So that's
6 mana total.
6 mana. And I think Lossett's unhappy to let this resolve, but ultimately okay to let it resolve.
Yeah, I mean, he can spin his top. Maybe he finds a spell pierce or something.
I mean, maybe he just lets it resolve. And nah, they're not going to do that. Just kidding. Okay.
Set found a Red Elemental Blast.
I mean, I think he could let it resolve.
You gotta just counter it. Get it out of here. I mean, if he finds a Red Blast, I'm fine with countering it. You see Chilbert smile a little bit.
Yeah, he knows this was the fight that the game was about, and Chilbert has lost the fight.
Lossett gonna redraw top. He's got a Flooded Strand in his hand. In comes Snapcaster Mage. Now Lossett can actually start working on Chilbert's life total here. Gonna play a top. That'll be good to go. Reestablish the counterbalance lock. Has Flooded Strand in his hand that he could just drop down and put into play in case he needs to actually fetch and clear. I think he's considering doing that right now. He also has the ability to actually draw a card here. Actually, kind of like this, too. So what he can do is he can draw. I believe his top card is Jace.
All right.
And so then he can actually play Jace and then Brainstorm and then get his top back. Yeah, and so that's what he's going to do.
I'm wondering if he was going to Brainstorm. He could also unsummon Snapcaster to rebuy the Red Elemental Blast.
Well, I think I actually think it's more important just to get top back into play.
Top down?
Yeah.
Sure.
And so what he can do is he can keep top and put 2 cards back. Maybe he just keeps top in a fetch land. in this situation.
Yeah, he just needs to close off the options for Chilbert. And I mean, the Blue Sun Zenith is in the graveyard now, which means Chilbert's going to have to resolve a Time Spiral or a Cunning Wish in order to win, because he's going to either have to reshuffle that Zenith back in or find another win con out of the Wish board. And between the in-play Jace and the counterbalance, this game should be going to Lossett.
There's that. Actually gets countered.
It's going to get Force of Willed. Not many cards left for Chilbert to counter. I mean, he was able to counter the top. He unfortunately wasn't able to counter the Jace, it looks like.
This is actually kind of interesting, right? Because, like, I'll ask you this question. Like, for example, if he decks out High Tide, so he's out of cards. Like, if he's out of, like, if Chilbert draws Time Spiral, you just cast it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what he's hoping to do.
Okay.
He's hoping to just draw Time Spiral right now.
It's like one of the few cards that can get him back into this thing.
Yeah, this is a strategy you oftentimes do against decks with black remove, like with a lot of discard, is that you will just try to, like, they're going to rip apart your hand, so getting the combos pretty unlikely. You actually just try to get 6 lands in play and then top deck a Time Spiral. That's why the Divining Top addition to the deck has been really powerful, is it really helps in those style of matchups.
So just a Candelabra from Chilbert. Lossett doesn't reveal for counterbalance. Passes the turn back, does Chilbert. Lossett comes in for 2. Now he's going to go brainstorming with Jace. Again, no real reason to Fate Seal here when there's a top in play. Top kind of trumps the old Fate Seal here, as it were. But Lossett found some pretty juicy ones there. It looks like he found 2 copies of Enduring Click. So, and now, okay, so what he's going to do, he's going to play a top. He's going to play his Caracas. He has an Enduring Click and a Terminus on top of his deck. We don't know what the 3rd card down is, but he's really establishing the lock right now.
Well, the Terminus is the important part, because that's the 6 mana spell. So now, even if Chilbert top decks the Time Spiral, Lossett's going to be able to counterbalance it. And
Hey, you would think the Terminus doesn't play a role in this matchup, but, you know.
yeah, it's cost
It's cost 6.
Cost 6. It's
Yeah.
a good roll. I mean, what he can do is, like I said, the only way that Chilbert can win the game is by either resolving a Time Spiral or resolving a Cunning Wish.
Yeah.
So between Vendilion Click and Terminus and enough mana to pay all the top activations, Lossett can keep Chilbert off both those spells.
I say he's got plenty of mana.
Yeah.
Now, he does have the Terminus in his I think he has Terminus in his hand. I'm not positive. It might be a top that he drew. He's actually going to say, okay, let's brainstorm here first.
Yeah. As long as he keeps those 2 cards in his top 3, I don't think Chilbert has a way to win.
I don't think so either. You see, Joe, yeah, there's a 3 and a 6.
Yeah, he drew a Terminus because there's another Terminus on top of his deck. Yep, putting a 3 and 6 back on top. He should have Chilbert covered from all angles.
And he's got Venser for extra security now, too. He can get super creative, like, you know, Venser my Snapcaster, cast my Snapcaster, Red Blaster spell. Like, he can get super creative with all of his lines of play now. And he also has Caracas.
What I actually think he might start doing is going end step Venser, Caracas, bouncing a land, Venser the Caracas the Venser, bounce a land. If you can force High Tide to pick up enough of their islands, they lose their ability to combo.
Yep. I'm going to spin the top here, and he is going to cast a Venser right now.
And this is one of the more frustrating ways to lose the late game, is if he actually starts making Chilbert pick up all his lands.
It looked like he targeted the top with the Venser, and I actually kind of like that too, because this allows Lossett to actually Fate Seal Chilbert and say, put your top to the bottom, and he can control his draw for the rest of the game. I think that's the plan here.
So now he's controlling Chilbert's draws. He has all of Chilbert's win cons locked up with counterbalance. And yeah, the headlock, you know, has been assembled here.
Yeah, this
He's
is
waiting for his opponent.
Yeah, this is just a painful
tap out.
submission hold. Yeah. Here's a brainstorm. You see a Pyroblast now.
So we have a 3, a 6, and a generic counter spell.
Yep.
Ooh. Well, that seems pretty good.
Whew. This is pretty much a clinic here. Now that he's got the lock in place, there's just no getting out. It feels like a prison style deck now. It's like, I have Jace, I'm attacking you, I can bounce my Venser if I want to, if there's a problem. I have access to Vendilion Click, I've got top counterbalance with the necessary mana cost. It's just, there is no way out.
Yep. Chilbert trying to find one of his win cons, cast Cunning Wish, and there's a Vendilion Click. There's the 3 he's kept on top that's going to take care of that.
The Vendilion Click also, the power that it adds to the table, assuming that Lossett wants to actually put it on the table on the end step, makes it so it's 7 damage. Again, he doesn't have to do that. It's just an option available to him. This is a Sensei's Divining Top. I'd be surprised if Lossett lets this resolve.
Well, we know there's a 1 in the top 3. He kept, I believe, a red blast in the top 3 cards.
He immediately shifts that to the top. Going to turn this card over. Bang. Counter
that matches it, and that'll be enough. Game 1 goes over to Joe Lossett.
Blue, white, red Miracles up a game over High Tide. You ready for some trivia, my friend?
Absolutely.
You got a question for me?
Well, we have a High Tide deck in the top 4, so we're asking questions about the decks that are seeing play here. I would have to imagine that we might have an appropriately themed trivia question.
All right, so if you guys don't have Colin Chilbert's deck list ready, you probably should, because I think that's the direction Matthias is going to go. Of course, hashtag SCG Premium for your answer. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we're going to announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round here. So again, it's about accuracy, not speed, as Matthias. I wonder what High Tide question you're going to ask.
All right, well, this one, High Tide's a deck that still can be innovated sometimes. With these combo decks, lots of times, with decks, I suppose, like Dredge or Storm, you see very little innovation, but there has been some in the High Tide deck, and I'm asking for the name of the 1 Theros card that has been added to the 75 of Colin Chilbert's High Tide deck.
Okay, I found
exactly
it.
1 card from Theros.
I was actually kind of surprised. If you can name that Theros card that has been added, again, hashtag the answer, SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round. I think this match is probably going to take longer than Delvermere, but we'll see. First things first, we're going to take a look at the sideboard. You can deal with Mr. Chilbert.
All right, well, it's a difficult matchup for Chilbert. He needs to be, he only has, like we said, a 4-card sideboard or so. So let's look at the cards he has. He has 2 defense grids. They're going to come in. They come in against blue decks. They tend to be pretty good in this situation. Once again, there's still a difficulty going on here that it doesn't deal with counterbalance. So he's going to want the cards that can deal with counterbalance as well. So he has these 2 wipeaways. The reason he's playing 2 is that he can put 1 in the deck and keep 1 on the board. That way he can scroll or wish for a wipeaway. So I think one of those will come in. I think both his defense grids will come in the matchup. There's also, well, let's see. He's looking at his opponent's deck list. Lossett does not have any surgical extractions. If Lossett had a surgical extraction style card, Chilbert would have to move one of his High Tides to the sideboard, but he doesn't have one, so he can keep all 4 in the main if he wants to. I would imagine that those 3 cards come in. Once again, he only has a 4-card sideboard, so that'd be about it. As far as what to board out in the matchup, really, he still needs most of his counter spells. You can, I think, in the matchup, you can board out perhaps like a Candelabra. You could board out a Flusterstorm, since the spell you're fighting over is actually going to be the counterbalance, which you can't Flusterstorm. That said, you can always cut one of the cantrips, like a Preordain, perhaps.
Other side of things here with Lossett. He's already got a pretty nice Game 1 matchup, and things look like they're only going to get better. There's a Needle, there's a Relic of Progenitus, a Sulfur Elemental, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Flusterstorm, a Pyroblast, a Red Elemental Blast, a Spell Snare, 2 Wear and Tears, a Venser, and 2 copies of Supreme Verdict. So again, you are my go-to for High Tide. The card that jumps out to me right now is Rest in Peace. Is that good here because this is a deck that's trying to Time Spiral?
I do not like Rest in Peace in the matchup. I don't think Lossett needs it here. Remember that we've seen Chilbert win games without using Time Spiral. Not to mention that once, so say the first time around, all Chilbert's cards get exiled. It's inconvenient, yes, but if Chilbert does have control of the game, he can go find a bounce spell after the Time Spiral, bounce the Rest in Peace, continue comboing, and probably still finish the deal. So cards that are hate cards for the graveyard are oftentimes not good against High Tide. You don't really want Artifact Destruction either, so cards like Wear Tear, not particularly good. If you want to hit out the graveyard, I would say you should do it with cards like Relic of Progenitus, cards that can draw, that are less of an actual investment.
Okay. Pyroblast, Red Blast, those are easy. Spell Snare, you've got targets in Merchant Scrolls, so that might just be worth it.
It depends how many dead cards you have. Merchant Scrolls find a counter, and I think he's going to do it. Certainly he has some Swords to Plowshares that needs to board out, some Terminus.
Is Terminus dead?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much dead.
6 mana? Counter Time Spiral, counterbalance?
That is what it does.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's all that it does.
That is all it does.
Okay. Fair enough. Outside of that, Wear Tear, I don't know if he needs those to keep Candelabra in control. It's kind of the same thing we saw with Nullrod a little bit earlier, where, it's kind of inconvenient if Candelabra doesn't work, but it's not, that big of a deal.
I mean, Candelabra is not where Lossett's fighting this fight. Where he's fighting the fight is he's going to counter the High Tide, counter the Time Spiral, and resolve his own counterbalance. Those are the 3 things that matter to Lossett, and none of those 3 statements particularly involve Candelabra of Taunos.
Okay. Well, those look like the options here for both players. Quick update for you guys as well. Eddie Solis in the blue-eye-red Delvermere up a game here over Austin Palmer. Again, winner of that match gets the winner of this match. So at the very least, we're going to have a blue-eye-red Delver deck onto the finals, which is kind of the norm nowadays for Legacy tournaments. I know back in the day, we used to see that happen a lot with Rug Delver, but now it looks like blue-white-red is kind of the flavor of the year thus far.
Yeah, it really alternates. We've seen Bug Delver, Rug Delver, and Blue-White-Red Delver. All these different aggressive shells. I sometimes feel like the name Blue-White-Red Delver is a little belies its nature a little bit. I think of it as more of a Stoneblade deck splashing Delver than a Delver deck splashing Stoneblade.
Okay.
Bug and Rug to me really seem like that Delver tempo strategy, but Blue-White-Red has a lot less tempo elements in the deck.
Sure. So again, we'll be underway here in just a little bit, and both players are just shuffling up, getting ready to go. Looks like they're laying out their opening hands. Again, Joe Lossett did win game number 1. He's number 8 on our Open Series leaderboard here in Season 2. Kind of funny story. He went through some real travel problems at the Invitational when he was heading to Charlotte. Flights got really screwed up. They got him a voucher because they messed it up so bad. He ended up getting to the Invitational in Charlotte at like 6 a.m. in the morning, very little sleep. Ends up top 8ing the tournament. And then the voucher he used to come here.
Well, turned out well for him, though I have to think an entire day of miracles, having on no sleep. Boy, that's a thing.
That's easy for him. He was built for this with ice.
Man.
He was built to do this. Or at least he built himself to do this, as this looks like it's going to be a Sensei's Divining Top.
Yeah, beginning of the game, just a pair of lands from both players. We see on Chilbert's side, he does have a defense grid, and he has a high tide in his hand. If you're in Chilbert's spot, I don't think he wants to mess around too much. I think he wants to try to pull off a fast, or at least faster combo. The danger, like you see, he has a high tide and a time spiral on his hand right now, so he has the combo. The danger about playing defense grid right now is if he plays defense grid, then Lossett can untap and cast counterbalance, and then you've kind of lost the game for yourself.
Yeah, your defense grid isn't even accomplishing what you want it to then, which is kind of the problem. See if he wants to try to drop that down, though.
Yeah, remember, he does have the entire combo, so all he needs to do is make 4 lands and find as many counterspells as he can.
And Lossett with 2 Force of Wills and then a Wear Tear there. That's also another reason actually to bring in Wear Tear is because of defense grid, so I hadn't even considered that. There's an Mesa.
I think Wear Tear they may come in just because it's more live than some of the other cards he has in his main deck.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, between Terminus and Swords and some other cards, this is a Scalding Tarn. Chilbert's going to go down to 19 here. We'll see what land he wants to search up. There is an island.
I'm not even positive on the Miracle side that you need Entreat the Angels in this matchup. I think you're really just... Once you were, like, we saw that last game, there was no need for Entreat the Angels.
I don't think he needs Entreat to win. I think he can just win with the blue creatures that he has. 3 Vendilions, 1 Fencer, 1 Snapcaster. I think those are more than enough to get the job done as far as damage is concerned. It's nice that Entreat is a 3-mana spell, but I think that's really it.
So what you're saying is he should add out all the Miracles.
And he's just now he's just blue-white-red control.
Right.
He switched. Chilbert going to try to maybe resolve a spell here. We'll see.
And if you notice, he has actually collected all 4 of the different Zendikar full art lands now in play.
Yep.
He has 1 of each.
There's a defense grid. Maybe it's time to have a battle. Well, Spell Snare makes this pretty easy. You lose this fight.
Interestingly enough, if Lossett has the counterbalance in hand, I would actually let that resolve. So then you let the defense grid resolve, cast your counterbalance, then you Wear Tear the defense grid at some point and say, hey, look, I have countertop. I win.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a fun combo. It's going to spin the top again. I think Lossett's just now looking for lands. You see he's got a Jace. He's got 2 copies of Force and he's looking at another one up there.
He has 2 forces, 2 blue cards, so he is ready for the counter fight. And yeah, it's going to go ahead and fetch here. So the Wear Tear has been shuffled away. Obviously, there's no Candelabra in play for Chilbert. So no need for Wear Tear at the moment.
No, don't need it at all. Looks like going to spin top one more time. Again, looks like he's just looking for lands. Just a Brainstorm. Looks like a Red Blast and then something else. So it doesn't look like he has any lands at this point, but he's got a whole bunch of permission to protect himself with. And again, this is a situation where he's not under any pressure to really do anything. You see the top card actually is a counterbalance too, so that's a really, really good Sensei's Divining Top activation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeez.
So Chilbert, like I said, with the combo, but he's going to have to pick when to fight for it.
Yeah, and I like Lossett just kind of going for this here. You know, when he's got Forcible to protect himself, it looks like he's got 2 copies of Force and 2 blue cards and a Red Blast on top of his deck. It's like, yeah, let's have that fight. Here's Forcible. Chilbert going to remove a High Tide.
Yeah, and this is not going to work for Chilbert. I mean, if I'm Lossett, I'm willing to pitch my entire hand to resolve this. He has 2 blue cards, 2 Forces, and a Pithing Needle as his hand.
I'm right there with you on this one. Now, you know, what blue card does he want to remove? Because he's looking at a Jace, he's looking at a V-Click as well. He's just going to play Force. I think he's going to remove Jace to try to win this battle.
Jace doesn't matter if you can have countertop.
And that's going to slide right in there. So Chilbert's going to untap. He'll take a draw here. He's got another copy of Defense Grid in his hand, but again, that card doesn't really matter all that much. Just picked up a Brainstorm.
I mean, Defense Grid doesn't stop counterbalance activations.
That's the big problem. Now, of course, Lossett may want to consider here as he's going to spin 2, 3. And he can force this if he doesn't find a 2. Again, the question is just, does he care about this or not? That's all.
Yeah, Chilbert's going to try to use the Defense Grid to leverage himself to a situation where he can wipe away the counterbalance. Perhaps off a Merchant Scroll or that Wish. He does have a Cunning Wish in his hand, which could find it. That will give him 1 turn's opening to try to win. Granted, Wipe Away is not uncounterable. It just means that Lossett has to always, you know, they give him this mind game of where Lossett puts his 3-drop on the top 3 cards. So Defense Grid does stick this time. Which means that there's an opening for Chilbert, but
it just means it just seems like it just means like he doesn't care to me.
Right.
That's what it feels like. You see Vendilion Click here, going to show Time Spiral, a Cunning Wish, and a Brainstorm.
I mean, he does play Wear Tears in his deck, so if he really cares, he can probably find one and blow it up.
And yes, he does have to cast Vendilion Click now in the main phase because of the Defense Grid being out there, but that's okay. I guess the question is, what card do you take? It seems like Brainstorm to me. What do you think?
There's no fetch land here, so Brainstorm doesn't seem like too big of a thing to take. I would take the Wish.
Okay.
I mean, he's going to have to knock off that counterbalance with a Wipe Away, so you might as well take the card that finds a Wipe Away.
And again, Chilbert, again, there's a he can't because of Defense Grid. No, sir. That isn't a symmetrical effect. Lossett's Vendilion Click was on his main phase, so again, Defense Grid says you cannot do that.
Yeah, it depends whose turn we're on. So we're on Lossett's turn.
We're on Lossett's turn, yeah.
Okay.
Because he had to main phase Vendilion Click to even be able to cast it.
Right. You can't cast. It's all spells, not just instants and sorceries. You just don't. You know, it's like you're playing Portal. If you've ever played Portal Magic, it's your turn, and you're the only one who gets to do stuff on your turn.
So Chilbert, I mean, you can cast your Brainstorm now, but yeah, he has to do everything on his. We're having a main phase game now.
Right.
Before there was posturing, now there isn't.
You know, in Portal, there's not even a second main phase. It's just like you play all your spells, then you attack. It's the other guy's turn.
That's just it?
That's it.
I actually didn't know that. Here's a Brainstorm that's going to get countered by it.
It really makes the game feel weird if you try doing it.
It's going to be countered by the counterbalance. Here's a Merchant Scroll. The second to take a look at his hand. He has the ability to counter this if he'd like, but he is not going to, so.
All right, and this was a good play here for Chilbert. He wanted to check to make sure the coast was clear to find the Wipe Away. I have to think with the 2 Wipe Aways on his board, one of them is coming to the main deck. Now, there's a couple of dangers here. One of the dangers is that Chilbert hasn't actually found the combo yet. So, as long as Lossett can find a Caracas, he can just Caracas the Vendilion Click and take that card out of Chilbert's hand. So it's not even a Wipe Away. Chilbert's going to go ahead and get Turnabout.
A little surprising.
Yeah, I am a little surprised by finding Turnabout here. I'm not sure what the game plan is with Turnabout. You can't. Well, okay. Here's what you can do with Turnabout. If you get up to 6 lands, Turnabout starts becoming a really inefficient ritual at some point in the game. So on your turn, you could just say have 6 lands and a Time Spiral, and you could just tap 6 mana, Turnabout yourself, cast Time Spiral, and then you have 2 mana floating, and you have a Spiral.
You hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, it still doesn't solve the problem that Counterbalance is being a jerk and stopping you from ever resolving High Tide, but it does create more mana for you once you have 5 or more lands. Yeah, and there's land number 5. So right now it's a ritual for 1. All right, and here's what's going on. Chilbert looks like they traded some turns, and Chilbert has another Merchant Scroll. on his turn. We see Lossett looking to see if he can find a 2 to counter. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. He has a Red Blast and a Jace. And we'll see what Chilbert grabs this time. I see if he has one of the wipe-aways in his main. He needs to find some combo pieces, but remember that high tides just aren't going to resolve because of the counter top lock. All right, and the second scroll did find wipe away for the counterbalance.
All right. He's working.
Yeah,
He's working
on it.
He's got to get through a mess of stuff, but he's working.
So the advantage to wipe away here is that you can't counter wipe away for the spell from your hand, and if he casts wipe away on the counterbalance, Lossett's not even going to be able to top in response. He does get to check the top card with counterbalance to attempt to counter the wipe away, but he can't set it up, so he just has to have a 3 there. The way Lossett can defend against this is by having the 3, or if he just finds and casts a second counterbalance, that will work just as well. Also, if he finds a Karakas and Karakas's the Vendilion Click, that will also work.
So all this work, but you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, well, it looks like main phase, Chilbert's going to go ahead and wipe away the counterbalance here.
That's a...
I don't understand.
Well, I mean, he has to do it because of defense grid, right? Because it's going to cost 6.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything. You're just going to recast it.
Yeah.
You generally, you want to end step the wipe away and then win. And, I would assume you'd wait till you have 6 mana, then go ahead and end step it, pay the extra 3 because, sure, it still has split second. It's not going to get countered.
And then you're defended by defense grid then. To be able to do your thing.
Yeah, so the counterbalance, I think, is just going to come back down again. I mean, the defense grid's stopping Chilbert from countering it when Lossett goes for it again.
Yeah, I think you just have to redeploy.
Yeah, counterbalance is really good. Just cast it again. I don't think the wipe away didn't really accomplish anything there.
Maybe Chilbert thinks he could counter it or something. I'm not entirely sure. I'm a little surprised by that play because he went through all the work to actually find the wipe away, and then the wipe away didn't accomplish very much.
Exactly. Well, counterbalance is back on the board, and with only 2 wipe aways in the 75, Chilbert's going to be hard-pressed to get that counterbalance off.
What are we naming here with Needle, you think?
The only card you can name is Candelabra of Taunos.
Okay. We'll get confirmation exactly what Lossett's naming here.
I mean, you could name, you could also name Divining Top.
Yeah, that was the other one I was going to say, yeah.
Because he does play Divining
Your tops are better than his tops, presumably. But he did name Candelabra, so just shutting out that option too now.
Yeah, Lossett not particularly worried about Candelabras on this board. I mean, when there's no high tides resolved, Candelabra doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And Lossett has high tides in check for quite a while.
You see Lossett's considering casting a Brainstorm right now, of course, because defense grid, he won't be able to do it on Chilbert's turn. The Force Will Lossett has in his hand is pretty much dead right now because of the defense grid, so Chilbert does have the opportunity to actually do some stuff here if he can work it through a counterbalance. He's going to take a draw here. Like maybe he picked up another copy of Wipe Away? Maybe?
Well, he has 2. I don't think it's unlikely he boarded both in.
This is 5 mana.
Okay, so he's gonna go for the ritual here. He's gonna go tap for 5, ritual to untap lands, and then he's gonna tap up again and spiral. So here's the attempt at comboing. Defense grid's on the board, so Chilbert's going to get a fresh 7. He's going to get some more mana to work with, but he is by no means in the clear.
Yeah, and so the wipe away play looks like really weird, right, that he made. But I think the idea here was, okay, you have to redeploy counterbalance if you want it, and then you don't have enough mana to counter my other stuff because of defense grid. I think that might be the line of thought here. Yeah. And if Lossett decides, okay, fine, I won't redeploy counterbalance, like, okay, then you would get access to 1 counter spell.
But he was tapped out that turn, and if Chilbert already has the turnabout into Spiral, well, why doesn't he, he could just do that the previous turn.
That's true.
But that's what he's going to do. The turnabout was a ritual for 1. He floated 5, untapped 4, is tapping for 5, and is going to go ahead and cast Time Spiral. And Lossett, nothing he can do but sit back and watch.
Yeah, now this is a thing here where it's a situation that you mentioned. This isn't a time where Colin casts a Time Spiral, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. Because he hasn't cast a High Tide. Even if he does cast a High Tide, chances are it's not going to resolve because top and counterbalance are in play. So this is kind of a desperation Time Spiral, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's Time Spiral to get a new hand. You want to shuffle the wipe away back in. But, yeah, this is by no means I don't think Chilbert's going to be able to combo this turn.
Yeah,
I
me
think what he
either.
hopes to do is find a 6th land and to wipe away and set up to end step wipe away the counterbalance. Once again, untap win.
Update in the other match, we have one player in the finals. Eddie Solis does win this match 2-0. He's going to play the winner here between Chilbert and Lossett. So we knew one blue at red Delver deck was going to come through, and it's in the hands of Eddie. Congratulations to him. So the spiral has resolved. Players are going to pick up some cards here, 7 apiece. We'll see what Chilbert does find again Lossett because there's defense grid in play. He did pick up Force Will and a Brainstorm, but those cards don't matter. He can't cast them. So Chilbert needs to really try to take advantage of this situation. I'm not sure the best way he can go about doing that because there is a top and a counterbalance and 1 mana available there for Joe, but he can try to find it.
All right, so he did not hit. He does hit land 6. I don't believe he hit the wipe away in his first 7.
Don't believe so. Again, this is a situation where Chilbert's just trying to give himself the best opportunity to win because, again, the walls are closing in on this game. Defense grid is nice, but top plus counterbalance is better. Vendilion Click providing a clock. Needle not really playing a huge role, but shutting out Candelabra from really doing anything here. And then Lossett does have some nice cards in his hand, 7 brand new ones, in fact, among them Force of Will. So, again, Chilbert needs to try to take advantage of the situation this turn the best that he can.
Yeah, so we're going to see now with an extra land, seeing what he's going to go for here. All right, so we look at his hand, and he does, let's recount. He has another land. He has a Preordain, and that's all we know about right now. You know, he has free reign here, so he can resolve anything that doesn't cost 1. He can even go for a 1-drop and maybe have Joe tap that top, which wouldn't be bad on Chilbert's side if it happens.
There's a chance that Chilbert wants that to happen, you know?
Yeah, 1 mana is a really annoying number to have the counterbalance stuck on, but it does take away Joe's flexibility. You know, at that point, he's just locked in. The counterbalance is only on 1 for that turn.
This is a Preordain. Again, you see Joe looking at his hand, but those cards don't actually matter, the cards that are in hand, again, because of defense grid. So even though he can consult those things, kind of weigh his options, I think the reason he might be looking at those cards is to think about what he has left in his deck. How many 1s, for example, do I have? Do I actually want to try to spin first, or do I just want to put a top on top? He is going to spin. It looks like that top card was something that he was looking for. He's going to consult his hand really quickly before he sets everything up. You see it's a Flusterstorm and a Brainstorm along with the Scalding Tarn, so gotta like what you see there. Flip this over. That's a Flusterstorm.
All right, so Chilbert will not get the chance to Preordain there.
Again, I like countering the 1s a lot here, just for the reasons you mentioned. Like, the 1s are really important for Chilbert to be able to do his thing.
I mean, it's free counter spells.
Yeah.
The investment cost is so low here.
It's so hard for me to push through this wall of counterbalance just being on 1, and now he just has to pass the turn back here. So now Lossett gets to untap his lands. He gets to draw a Flusterstorm. He can leave mana up for that if he'd like, because Flusterstorm will cost 4 mana, and he can keep putting the pressure on Vendilion Click. Not to mention, he's got a Caracas in his hand, so he can bounce Vendilion Click if he wants.
He's got Caracas, Vendilion Click. I mean, what he can do is he can actually leave up Force of Will and just the 3 mana to pay for the defense grid.
Yeah.
So now he has a countertop going. He has a Force of Will that he can pay for. This is a wall that I don't think Chilbert's going to be able to break through.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very hard to do. Again, he's got a 1 on top, so he doesn't even have to even spin his top or anything. Could have chosen to play, I think, a fetch line that turn if he wanted to. Looks like he's just going to go with Caracas and just pass the turn back. And I'd be pretty comfy if I was him, too, as he's just got a wall of blue cards. He's got top plus counterbalance, and he's got pressure and Vendilion Click. What more do you need?
Exactly. So hits for 3, passes back. And Chilbert likely will not be able to resolve any spells here. He has land number 7. But yeah, once counterbalance Divining Top's assembled, it's very hard to deal with.
The second to spin his top, you see a balance. There's a Tarn there, and I believe just 1 more land. There's a pretty decent chance I think he wants to put Brainstorm in the middle just because, okay, I draw a land, that's fine. Do I want to draw a fetch land or a basic? That's debatable. But I want to leave that Brainstorm up there just to have a 1 so I don't have to actually draw a card with my top.
Right. You'd like to keep the top in play whenever possible.
Yep. Does draw a land, comes in here. Chilbert's going to go down to 4 from the Vendilion Click.
And, yep, draws that basic island. We see just a bevy of counter spells here. We see a Spell Pierce, a Flusterstorm, a Force of Will. Granted, he can't cast all of those because of the defense grid, but he can cast 1 right now, and next turn he'll be able to cast 2.
Yeah, and he doesn't need to be able to cast all of these. That's the big thing, too. is he has just enough. Now, even if wipe away comes into the equation, I think it's more of an annoyance than anything. Is now this is a brainstorm. There's a decent chance that Lossette's going to draw 3 cards here and try to set a 3 back on top of his deck, for example.
The danger here are on 7 lands, what Chilbert can do is he could, even through the defense grid, end step turnabout targeting Lossett. He could pay for that. It would be all his mana, but it's there. Granted, you have to assume Lossett has a counter spell, and because that would be on Lossett's turn, it would be a very easy counter war for Lossett to win.
Yep. Chilbert going to pass back. There's turnabout, as you did mention.
Yeah, he's going to go for that play, but, I mean, he knows how narrow of an out this is. You know, he's paying 7 mana for spell. Joe can counter for 1.
Yeah. Flusterstorm that or Spell Pierce that, what have you. Pass the turn back. Your turnabout plan is not going to work, mostly because your turnabout plan is so expensive because Chilbert has defense grid in play, and again, it is symmetrical, so that was on Lossette's turn.
Yeah, defense grid is very good to play during your combo. It's typically good against counterspell decks, except when they are counterbalance, because they can still counter everything under a defense grid.
It seems for Colin Chilbert, he ran into the wrong guy at the wrong time in this tournament. That's what it feels like. And it's been a really, really good weekend for him. Don't get me wrong. Top 8 with Burn earlier this morning in our Standard Open and a #1 seed here in the Legacy Open. But this wall is borderline impossible to break down.
Yeah, once the counterbalance is in play, things are just bad news. And Lossett was able to win that counter war. Colin was able to keep it off the board temporarily with a wipe away, but Lossett just able to recast the counterbalance, reassemble the wall. And it looks like Vendilion Click is 2 swings away from carrying Joe Lossett into the finals.
Yeah, that looks like the road we're going to be heading in just a moment here. He's going to spin top. He'll untap his permanents here. Take a draw, quickly attack. Going to put Chilbert down to 1. So fetch lands, well, those are off now. Lossett hasn't played a land just yet, but he will play a fetch land of his own since he's at a healthy 18. And looks like he's going to sacrifice this, go down to 17. Just wants to make sure that everything is locked up here. He's got probably every window closed, but there's no reason to get a little overconfident, as it were.
Yep, I mean, you want to be respectful of the matchup. Things feel really good, but you want to make sure it's locked out. You know, you're playing Miracles, so you have answers to everything as long as you play correct.
Looks like he may cast a Brainstorm here. Not entirely sure. You see his hand. He's got a top, got a Force of Will, some other stuff over there. Plenty of permission to make himself happy. Don't forget about that Flusterstorm in the grip as well. Did play his land already for the turn. It was the Scalding Tarn. That might be what Joe was inquiring about. Looks like he's going to cast a Brainstorm potentially here just to make sure that the top of his deck is kosher. And he may hold off. We'll see. Again, it just seems like, and we talked about this at the top, it just seems like a really tough matchup for Chilbert to be able to win. He puts so much pressure on his wipeaways to get the job done here.
Exactly. He puts a lot of pressure on the wipeaways. It's a tough matchup. You know, cards like Swan Song can help, but you still can lose that counter war.
He's going to try to turn about again. You see Lossett now is looking at the Flusterstorm that he's had for some time now and says, this'll do just fine. 1 mana for your 7?
For the record, this is one of the situations that are, like, if you want to have a sideboard card, something like Giga Drowse would be more effective at doing what Turnabout's trying to do.
Sure.
It's a replicate spell. It'd be very hard to cancel. That's a card that's been talked about sometimes in High Tide as if you want a surefire way to tap out your opponent. You know, you are playing a bunch of blue mana, so you can go ahead and do that. That makes a separate copy each time, so it gets around counter spells.
Yeah, we've seen decks in the past use this to great effect. It actually even saw some standard playing like Heartbeat decks as a way to actually tap out the blue mana from counterspell decks and then let you go off. Dragonstorm, for example, really used this card to great effect since they could generate a bunch of mana and had those storage lands that they could charge up before going off.
Exactly. So, Red Blast takes care of the turnabout.
Yep.
As expected.
There's a Misty. He goes from 1
goes out the honorable way
to none. Joe Lossett moving on to the finals. Defeats Colin Chilbert. And in 2 very decisive games, Blue, White, Red Miracles is going to head against Eddie Solis, who is playing Blue, White, Red Delver. I hope you like your Tundras at home.
Yeah, Eddie Solis, we saw him on camera playing for top 8 in round number 7. Actually defeated by Burn.
Okay.
But able to win his way into top 8, and is now in the finals where he's going to face still undefeated 8th player in the Player of the Year standings. I'm assuming he's going to be higher up in standings after this tournament, Joe Lossett.
Yes, sir. he is definitely going to climb that leaderboard here. We're going to bring it back to the booth here for you guys as we do have some premium to give away, and we have a finals to get ready for.